Welcome to the Gio and Joel Show. Today we're very excited to speak to Bishop Mitchell G. Taylor. He founded the East River Development Alliance, a job training program which is now known as Urban Upbound, and he is the senior pastor at Center of Hope International. Bishop Taylor, thank you for coming on our podcast.
Gio and Joel, man, this is exciting. I'm glad to be on with you guys and to talk community. Let me first kind of give some background and make sure that we're talking about the same thing. So I'm Bishop Mitchell G. Taylor. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Urban Upbound, a community-based organization that is citywide in New York City. We've got 4 brick and mortar campuses, one in Astoria houses, one in Queensbridge houses, one in Jefferson houses in Harlem, and then in Far Rockaway, Queens. And then we have 26 satellites in the 5 boroughs of New York City. And Urban Upbound is comprised of Business Innovation Center, Workforce Training and Placement Center, One-on-One Financial Counseling Center, Youth, both academic and vocational center, and then we own our own bank, the Urban Upbound Federal Credit Union. To us, all of these individual silos are not novel. But when you can integrate them comprehensively on campuses, it becomes magical. And of course, our campus in Queensbridge and Astoria stretches through the northwestern Queens belt. And our work there, of course, was the genesis of Urban Upbound's start. And so those campuses are very near and dear to us.
Great.
That's fantastic to hear. I mean, I was just going to say that the reach of your organization it sounds like it's definitely very far reaching. Would you classify the work that you do as a community organization? Do you facilitate mutual aid? What is the main piece of work that you would say?
Right. So Urban Upbound was established to break cycles of poverty in public housing neighborhoods. When I started pastoring 33 years ago, and I started in Astoria at the St. George's Episcopal Church on 14th Street and 27th Avenue, my idea was really not just to evangelize and do and do spiritual church work, but I really wanted to reach into the community and do some things that were not done before, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. And partly because my dad started his church in 1961 in Long Island City, right across the street from Queensbridge Houses, the largest public housing development in the country. And because of my family's dedication to service, and we've lived in and around Queensbridge Houses all our lives, I thought that if we could launch something non-sectarian, because all my life I've just seen people managing poverty, trying to make ends meet, trying to get in where they can fit in, where there was never really an attempt to, create a pathway to prosperity for folks that live in poverty. And so it was my vision, or our vision and dream, to put together, to aggregate a suite of services. We didn't know what those services were. So we did lobby meetings in all of the buildings in Queensbridge, in Ravenswood, in Astoria, in Woodside. And we asked people in these 30-minute lobby meetings, what is the most important thing that you think is needed in your community for it to be the place that you want to live in? And we asked them, how could you help us bring those things to pass? And a series of other questions that really spiked the interest of the population as we were going around. This was in 2002. In 2004, after we gathered all of the information and what have you, we were able to shake out of those surveys 4 main silos: workforce, building wealth, youth development, and community revitalization. And my dad said to me before he died, October 1st, 2004, he said, "Mitchell, you'll never make sustainable change unless you own money." I said, "What do you mean own money?" He said, "You have to open up your own financial cooperative." He said, "Here's the thing. You have to send the message that we're not going to wait for people to build it for us. We're going to build it ourselves. So theoretically, when you open up a financial cooperative or a credit union, which is an owner-member-driven bank, all right, you're saying that I'm not going to wait for you to build my playgrounds and build my community centers. We're going to build it ourselves, theoretically. Pragmatically, it'll take a few years. It'll take some time to do that. But I'm proud to report that the credit union is celebrating its 10th anniversary in 2020, April of 2020. And like any other mainstream bank, we have checking, savings, debit, credit, loans, and all those things that make the financial boat float. These are tools and resources that were not available in public housing neighborhoods, especially in Northwestern Queens, in this integrated, comprehensive way. And so, these communities are very near and dear to me, partly, one, because I grew up there, two, because my life has been dedicated to the service of these populations, and number three, because I couldn't see myself, and I couldn't see myself doing anything different. And today, the need is much greater than ever before. Now, just to pivot, and then I'll stop so you can ask another question. Just to pivot, when the pandemic hit, you asked me earlier, I think before we came online, what were some of the things that Urban Upbound did to pivot during this pandemic? And one of the things that we did was we commandeered in the first week of March a 10,000 square foot warehouse with loading docks, refrigeration, freezer, offices, and so on and so forth. And we was able to put this facility right into operation. We leased 24, 26-foot trucks. We hired drivers. We got volunteers from the neighborhood. We stipend helpers and began a network of food distribution to help those that would be the most vulnerable during this pandemic. And during that time, and during this time, we're able to serve between 200 and 250,000 pounds of food from the beginning of Northwestern Queens all the way as far as Amityville, New York, and everything in between. And so that's on the relief side. On the recovery side, our teams are working remotely and kinesthetically with social distancing and protective gear to make sure that we can help residents that have been impacted the most in public housing neighborhoods, your retail workers, your health workers, people that are not going back to work because their companies are not coming back online, trying to figure out what's next for them. Where are they going to go next? What is their next career? What is their next move in terms of employment and securing resources? So our work today is more important than ever before.
That relief effort you mentioned in terms of distributing food, how does food distribution work? Do you bring it to soup kitchens or like one of those free food pantries that you sometimes see in like on the streets?
So the way that the way that we have done it, Gio and Joel, is we have dry goods and produce, vegetables, meat, milk, and dry goods. We've contracted with farms through the Farm to Family program to get these boxes that are mixed composition boxes with potatoes, vegetables, fruit, rice, a nice box for a family of 3 to last, a few days to supplement during the week. Now, those boxes are delivered to us at our warehouse by the trailer loads each week. And then our individual trucks deliver the boxes to the different delivery outposts that are serving food insecure communities around the city of New York. And so that's how that operation runs Monday through Friday. There are different stops on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, on Thursday, and on Friday. And these individual stops, we're like the wholesaler, and we're delivering them to the local distributors that actually deliver to the people. And then in Long Island City, of course, we at the warehouse, we serve twice a week now, Wednesday and Friday, right from the warehouse.
But this is just specific to the pandemic, right? Or do you foresee this going on past the end of the pandemic?
Well, that's a good question. The Center of Hope International, the church I pastor, has had a food pantry for the last, 35, 40 years, maybe 45 years, maybe. And so they have an active food pantry already. We just stepped in the pandemic because of the need. The need was so great that one food pantry or even three food pantries couldn't, really address the Herculean need that has arisen because of the pandemic.
Got it. So yeah, you mentioned the Center of Hope International, and obviously you have origins in religion. Dating back to your father. How does Urban Upbound coordinate with religious institutions, if at all? How does that work? To what extent do you coordinate with religious institutions as opposed to the municipal government, as opposed to other nonprofit organizations to distribute resources and to help the community?
That's a very good question. So, Urban Upbound, the platform upon which we started was organizing all the social networks that exist in public housing neighborhoods. Who is that? Your resident leaders, your business leaders, your religious leaders, your community-based organization leaders, your education leaders, and organizing all of those people in these social networks to change public housing neighborhoods, not from the outside in, which has been the historical model, but actually from the inside out and from the bottom up. And so churches, mosques, and synagogues historically have been the centers of community since time immemorial. And so it's no different now. If you're going to organize a community, you're going to have to organize all the social networks that exist in that community. And that includes religious institutions and religious leaders, community leaders, resident leaders, business leaders, political leaders, public and private partnerships coming together to solve community issues, problems.
I like the way that you and your organization are approaching the issues. You brought it up again in this response and in the beginning when you were describing the work you do. This idea that groups that don't necessarily have much wealth need to kind of capture and cultivate the wealth that does exist in the community and build upon that wealth. I wanted to ask if you see kind of a timeline or some sort of, I know that COVID has gotten in the way of what expectations you might have had, but what trajectory do you see the communities you work in heading? And what kind of timeline do you see for growth within the community as far as people on this pathway out of poverty, as far as the community wealth remaining inside of the community and not escaping it, jobs being created amongst the residents?
So needless to say, the pandemic has created a significant setback for community development and progress in already hard hit, impoverished neighborhoods like the neighborhoods that we serve. And so the pandemic has compounded that. I can give you an example. Prior to the pandemic, Long Island City, particularly in and around Queensbridge houses, experienced a building boom. What kind of boom was that? A hotel building boom. And so we've had the Marriott, the Courtyard Marriott, we've had Intercontinental, Wingate by Wyndham, boutique hotels and whatnot have all come, Best Western have all come to Long Island City because tourism in Manhattan was booming. hotels in Manhattan were outrageous. And just one train stop from Manhattan is a little place called Long Island City. And in Long Island City, which is actually 9/10 of a mile from 59th Street and 2nd Avenue, is the best kept secret in the world. My father told me years ago when I was a little boy, he said, Mitchell, never leave Long Island City and never sell the property. I said, I want to ask you why to both questions. He said, well, I'll answer the second one first. He said, Mark Twain said, buy property. They're not making any more. And then the second thing is Long Island City is 7 minutes from the world. 7 minutes from Manhattan, 7 minutes from Brooklyn, 7 minutes from the Bronx, and most importantly, 7 minutes from LaGuardia Airport, which makes it 7 minutes from the world. Now, when the pandemic hit, in order to protect our homeless brothers and sisters, the mayor had to make a decision. He took them out of their kinesthetic environments, communal environments, dormitory environments, and put them in hotels. What hotels did he decide to put them in? All of the hotels that surround Queensbridge houses. What was the population that came to Queensbridge? Those that were mentally ill, those that were registered pedophiles and sex offenders, the worst of the worst challenges that people can have were embodied in our homeless brothers and sisters that were just dumped in the middle of the night here in our neighborhood. When we woke up the next morning, there were men sitting on our bench wearing no underwear, people walking around talking to themselves because they were dumped there at 12, 1 o'clock in the middle of the night. And so this has set this. So the community now looks like something back from the 70s before you guys were even born. And it's just, I can't even explain, an already, a community that's already struggling to break the cycles of poverty and do better, from an algebraic equation of -50 is now plunged even further into recession with the responses or the outgrowth of or activities of the pandemic. And so, this has been a tremendous setback in that way. And then there has been, the death rate has been exponentially more demonstrative and impacted in the Black and brown communities, especially those that live in public housing, than in any other communities. Then the medical disparities that are experienced in these communities are, off the charts, to say the least. And so from this pandemic, Black and brown communities have suffered the most, have died the most, both financially, but that's not as important as mortally. Okay? They've died mortally, and they've died economically.
I'm glad you made that distinction too, because it's so frustrating to see this value of our economy and money over human lives. There should be no point in which we're willing to sacrifice any of our people for the economy. It's a figment of our imagination compared to people's real lives. And it's even more telling of how, a lot of the people I talk to, my family, even me myself, feel kind of abandoned and ignored by the government. And for the example like you gave, where the city government is just people who are the most vulnerable, people who need the most help, are just being almost discarded and being put somewhere where resources are already so strained.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bishop Taylor. Obviously, we all agree that there were inadequacies, and there are major inadequacies, not only with how the municipal government of New York addresses the pandemic, but also economic disparities and wealth disparities in general. I want to ask specifically during the pandemic, have you or your organization done any lobbying on behalf of the communities you represent to move the city government in any direction, or have you, taken steps to lobby for a specific bill to be passed or a program to be implemented?
Well, I haven't. I mean, I haven't lobbied for anything specifically. I think that my lobby has been my work and the response to the pandemic, both in relief and recovery, and in constant conversations with elected officials and business leaders about how the shape of the city, what shape the city is going to take, with a new administrator coming on board, and talking to those people about what is most needed in this recovery season. And so if you want to consider that a lobby of sorts, I think that we've been doing a lot of that, talking to the potential candidates that are running for mayor of New York City, and even the local administrators in the city council districts, particularly Woodside, Astoria, and Long Island City. And then, of course, where we have other campuses in Harlem, in East Harlem, and in Far Rockaway as well. So, we are very much, that's the uniqueness about Urban Upbound, because it's elected officials and political leaders are a part of our mission in terms of organizing all the social, groups that exist in these neighborhoods. And elected leaders, religious leaders, political leaders are a part of that.
Do you have a preferred candidate for mayor?
No.
Okay,
not yet.
You'll work with it.
I will
equally. I had a question, but I forgot it. Yeah, I'm totally blanking. I do want to talk about.
That's okay. I think you were asking about the lobby, and you was asking about my particular choice for mayor, and I did want to expand on that. There are 5 or 6 candidates that are running for mayor of New York City, and I'm interested in speaking to all of them. I've spoken to many of them, almost all of them, and I understand that. I can't remember his first name, but his Yang. You remember Yang that ran for president, the first Asian man that ran for president?
Yes.
What's his first name?
Andrew Yang.
Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang is rumored that he may be throwing in his hat for mayor of New York City. I'm looking forward to speaking with each one of those candidates and expressing to each one of them what my concerns are and what the concerns of the populations that we serve, and what we can do to program to solve. And my thing is, I'm not looking for a lot of lip service. What I'm looking for is for people that look like us in our communities to have institutional positions in government that will be committed to make change on the ground.
Yeah, I did hear about Yang reaching out to community leaders. So it'll be interesting to see if you do talk to him and any other mayoral candidate who reached out to you. What would you say to these candidates if you were to choose the easiest single thing that they could do to alleviate poverty in these communities you represent? What would you recommend? Would it be in the area of education?
Well, listen, I always say this, and there's a lot to be done, but I always say this. If you're looking for the neediest New Yorkers in New York City, I'll tell you where to go. The New York City Housing Authority. If you want to see people that are living in the worst conditions in New York City, go to the New York City Housing Authority. And although, I work in alliance with the Housing Authority and I'm not bashing them, but they have a Herculean issue, a Herculean problem to solve. And, people are living in dire conditions, the gaping holes in the ceiling because of, perpetual water leakage and damage and seepage. Pipes and gas risers are, on average, 15 to 2,000 gas risers are out in any given week in the NYCHA portfolio. That means that 1,500 to 2,000 apartments are without gas, cooking gas. So I would say to the next mayor, focus on New York City Public Housing Authority. Focus on that. That's 178,000 apartments spread out through all the 5 boroughs of New York City. 343 conventional plants, developments in the 5 boroughs. For the most part, a lot of which are in disrepair, underserved, and overlooked. So I would challenge the mayor, stop looking over, stop looking away, stop ignoring, stop giving lip service and saying, oh, but it's a federally run housing. No, it sits in New York City, and the citizens of New York City pay taxes and they live in those apartments. And so New York has to take responsible for it. The administration has to take responsible for people. I don't care who owns the brick and mortar.
Yeah, well, that's very passionate.
Yeah, Gio and I were we were talking a little bit about NYCHA and the shortcomings, and I mean, I think we've all at one point or another seen the headlines of people not having gas or not having heat, buildings literally crumbling and in disrepair, elevators not working, buildings in need of repair. I don't know if this is, I briefly saw something about this with NYCHA being one of the places where the pandemic has hit the hardest, NYCHA houses.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a proposal for when vaccines are available to distribute them first to NYCHA residents. I don't know how true this is or how likely this is. Have you heard anything about that?
Saying that they're going to do what?
Distribute the vaccine to NYCHA residents first or give them priority.
I haven't heard that, but that wouldn't be a bad idea.
Okay.
Especially since we're the ones that died first. These people have been impacted the most by this pandemic.
Yeah, that's right.
And so it would make sense. I mean, along with hospital workers and, those emergency care people, and folks that are in nursing homes, I think the populations that have been, impacted the most. I don't think you should start going up to the Upper East Side.
No.
I don't think you should start going to, to elite parts of New York and whatnot and get those people that have the ability to work from home and social distance and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No,
the ones who can pay, they're the ones who can also afford to wait a little longer.
Exactly. Those are the ones that ran to the Poconos, ran to the Hamptons, ran to here, ran to there. No problem. Stay there. That's your vaccine. Stay wherever you at. Okay. That's your vaccine. And let the people that have been suffering in the inner city, okay, the service workers, the people, doing the takeout, the people that have to be to work, that can't afford to stay home. And then those that have been shut down because even those jobs are gone. Listen, those are the people that need to get that vaccine first. Those are the people that are hurting the most. Those are the people that their family members died and they couldn't even see them while they were dying and transitioning because we didn't know how to manage the disease. All right. And I'm not blaming anybody for that, but we were hit hard because of it.
What do you see as the biggest success of your organization throughout this pandemic, or just in general? Would it be in the area of unemployment or job training, or would it have more to do with your credit union and small business development in your communities?
Wow, Gio, that's a pretty difficult question to answer, because if I look at the credit union, I think that's a major accomplishment to open a financial institution in New York City and still be open 10 years later. That's pretty big, especially when we started. Everybody told me, run in the other direction, abandon the idea, you'll never do it. I didn't get any encouragement, all discouragement, but we did it. That's a great accomplishment, I think. The fact that it's still open is even a greater accomplishment. The fact that Urban Upbound is responsible for introducing one-on-one financial counseling for poor people is another great accomplishment for Urban Upbound. Maybe one of our greatest accomplishment is pioneering one-on-one financial counseling for poor people in New York City, lobbying for one-on-one financial counseling for poor people. People told me they'll never finance financial counseling for poor people. And today, because of Urban Upbound's work, the city of New York has taken up the financial counseling model and has financed 26 financial empowerment centers around the city of New York. That's because of the work of Urban Upbound. Also, under employment services, we launched the first non-city funded Jobs Plus site in New York City. And because of our work in lobbying for Jobs Plus, there are now 18 Jobs Plus sites operating, not nearly enough, operating in public housing neighborhoods in different parts of the city, which is a full saturation employment program specifically designed for who? Public housing residents. And Urban Upbound is proud to have won the latest round of Job Plus centers in Northwestern Queens, the one in Astoria houses and the one in Queensbridge houses, both of which cumulatively equal about $8.6 million worth of resources that will be delivered to residents of public housing. And it's not being delivered by somebody that came from the outside or from the top. It's being delivered from people like myself that came from the bottom and from the inside. Homegrown.
Yeah, grassroots work. Would you say, I mean, I think both of our opinions, Gio and mine, are that grassroots work is the way that we're going to achieve progress. But I mean, do you think that most hope is lost in terms of institutional means? Like, do you think that grassroots work is going to be the way to go from now on?
I'm trying to follow your question. So you have, grassroots organizations, those organizations that work on the ground, delivering services to communities that are in need, depending on what particular services they're talking about. Whether it be employment services, financial services, youth services.
So like the work that your organization is doing. I guess my question is essentially, do you see anytime soon the government, whether that be the city or federal government, stepping in and contributing in a significant way towards this goal? Or do you think that over the next 10, 20 years, however long, it's going to have to rely on people like us doing work ourselves?
I think people like us are responsible to hold the government accountable to solving big solutions, big problems that we have in our communities. So I think the electorate body, we should be not asleep. We should be very conscious of the fact that if we do not hold the government accountable, then the government will not be held accountable. And so that's something that we should think about. And I think that when you talk to your friends and your family members at the dinner table and you ask them, well, what are you doing, man, to help fight poverty? I don't know, what should I be doing? Well, use your power, influence, and wealth to make change. How do you do that? People with power, influence, and wealth talk to each other. People with power, influence, and wealth influence each other. And I think that is what's needed. I think we have to keep the pressure on at all times, with our federal and local and state governments about their responsibility to solve to these issues. That's why they're taking taxes out of our checks every week, and because we trust them to manage our resources to keep our country equitable for all. One country under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, I mean, grassroots organization is definitely important. But yeah, Joel, I mean, and you and I agree on this. The government is the biggest financial actor in any given context, at least in the United States, right?
Yeah.
And so, it is a matter of holding them accountable, but also it's a matter of breaking into the elite game, because government is an elite game. Poor people, they don't have the resources. Working people don't have the resources, the money, the time, the wherewithal to permeate that game. So I'm wondering, Bishop Taylor, if you've done anything. Obviously you're a community leader, so you're involved with politics. You counsel with municipal leaders and government officials. I'm wondering if you've done anything to promote. I'm not sure exactly how to phrase this, but to kind of promote the more working class representation. Like, how does that work? Or do you mainly work?
I understand. That's a very good point. We're often thinking about, how do we get more people involved in government? And is there some kind of educational track that can, help young people understand that this is a track, and something that you should pursue if you want to be a part of making change? Yes, that is, I do have a testimony that you probably might even want to pursue. Khalid Anderson. Khalid Anderson he lives in Far Rockaway. He came to Urban Upbound's office in Far Rockaway. He was down on his luck. He was practically homeless. We helped him with his finances and his budgeting, and helped him get himself back on his feet and whatnot. And as a result, Khalid was able to turn himself around. And short Reader Digest version, he is now the first and youngest elected assembly member in Far Rockaway, Queens. And if you look up Khalid Anderson, those of you that are listening to me, you'll see his website. He is the assembly member for Far Rockaway. I forgot the number of the district, but if you look it up, you'll find it. And I think he's 24 or 23 years of age, the youngest assembly representative ever to go to the assembly. And I believe that if he does good and whatnot, the sky's the limit. He could be president of the United States. I mean, that's how smart he is. And so I think, pulling on young people like that and helping them understand the importance of reaching back and creating, space for conversation for young people that are thinking about going into the political process and penetrating and permeating, as you used, that particular silo, because it's important.
Yeah. So what was there anything aside from the economic dimension, which is very important, aside from the work that you and your organization do on that level, is there anything? Let's just, I guess, talk about Khalid Anderson's trajectory to become a state or an assembly person. What did your organization do to push that trajectory?
We really didn't do anything to push that trajectory. I just mentioned that, what we did was we helped somebody that was down on his luck, get himself back together financially, and that just goes to show you that if you can help somebody get their financial footing, maybe they hit hard times and, didn't know what to do. But sitting down with one of our financial advisors and creating a life plan and a budget plan, enabled him to see clearly, and seeing clearly enabled him to see, hey, I realized what I was called to do. I'm called to go into politics. You could never,
Right.
It's hard to think like that when you don't have money to feed yourself, when you don't have a place to live, so I think that, solving one problem,
right.
Oh, wow.
Dragging
solving.
first. Sorry, my bad. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I think solving one problem, is big in, helping them see, the bigger picture.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is why I at least advocate for, and Joel too, social safety net that provides a reasonable floor for people to, even if you're, most working people and most poor people are not lazy bums. But even if you are, you should have at least a certain level of human dignity provided by the government so that you can have the opportunity and the space, just on a mental or psychological level to assess your life and assess your path forward and assess what can fulfill you in your place in this economy and your place in the society. So yeah, on that level.
But I don't think it's about, I don't think in our communities it's really about, I think in any community you do have, those that are good, bad, indifferent, those that are, what can I say? If you are, I'll put it to you like this. In our communities, if you're casual in these communities, you'll become a casualty. Okay? Because we have to work, 10 times harder than our white counterparts, run 10 times faster, get up 10 times earlier, just to stay on par. And this is a capitalistic country, but the problem is capital is not open to everybody. So we can't capitalize, There's only, the wealth of this country is being controlled by a very select number of people at the top, as you know. And I'm not mad at that. I just want to know, where's the pathway for me to get there?
Yeah. No,
that's all. Totally I don't need a handout. I don't need a handout. I need a handshake and a foot in the door. Damn it.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. And how is somebody going to, with someone having the energy and the commitment to better themselves, like how's that going to be possible if people have to fight just to stay alive? So.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen.
I share the ethos. Like we ostensibly we live in a meritocracy. We know that's not true because of these wealth disparities that you're talking about, and these income and social disparities that your work seeks to address. But yeah, we all strive for a perfect meritocracy. It's just the problem is how do we get there? I do think we need an economic floor provided by the government to raise those who are at the bottom up, to expedite the process. It takes a huge amount of effort to
let me tell you what it takes. Let me tell you what it takes. I don't mean to cut you off, but it takes political will. And I'll give you a perfect example, maybe not perfect, but it is an example nonetheless. The government, Congress, refuses to raise the federal minimum wage. Can you believe that the federal minimum wage is somewhere around $7 or $8 an hour or $9 an hour, maybe? You probably can't even fathom that in your mind, that the federal minimum wage is $8. I wish somebody would look that up. I think it's around $8 an hour.
No, I think it's $7.25.
Yeah. How much is it?
$7.25. It's the minimum wage in this country is so low that if you work 40 hours a week full time, minimum wage job, I think it's something like 95% of counties in the entire country, you can't afford a 1-bedroom or studio apartment. You quite literally do not make enough to have a home by yourself on a.
And we still have people saying that there's no such thing as working poor. I mean, it's reprehensible. I totally agree.
And it's not that the people don't want it.
All right, now do me a favor. Give me one of your cell numbers. Give me one of your cell numbers right now. I want to send you something real quick.
I'm going to put it in the chat.
You put it in the chat, because I don't want your viewers to hear this, but I'm looking at a picture that one of my staff just sent me of a man from the shelter in our community that is walking up and down the street butt naked right now as we speak.
Oh man.
I'm going to send it to you right now, Joel, right now, so you'll see it. Okay. So, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Here we are on a podcast talking about Queensbridge, and someone sends me a video of a naked man in the middle of the street in the height of children coming home, people coming home from work. Oof. Now, take a look at that. I just sent it to you, Joel.
Wait, Joel, can you forward it to me?
I just got it.
What's the situation? Is he?
Yep. He's right
on
the street.
I don't know what his situation is, but he in the middle of the street, and there's people with their phones videotaping this guy. Look like he's dancing in the middle of the street. But the point of it is not funny. This is mental illness. This is right across the street from Queensbridge. This is right on the This is unbelievable. You can't make this up. I just got finished telling you this. Yeah. Did I just not finish telling you this?
It's not like you're making this up. Yeah, it's actually happening.
You can't make this up. Your podcast viewers need to know, Gio and Joel, you guys need to be on Showtime because this stuff is happening in real time for you.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. I mean, he must be really cool. That's all I can. Jesus, yeah. How cold is it up there?
Yeah.
It's 70
degrees. Oh, today is pretty warm. Today is pretty warm. It was really cold yesterday. It was like in the 30s, but today is like in the like it's got to be like about 48, 50 degrees today.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So,
yeah.
But that brings up a mental illness and a healthcare issue. Does your organization do any work in terms of getting people access to healthcare or mental health care?
Yeah, I mean, again, our financial counselors probably deal with a myriad of different things that come, when they sit down to triage a client, whether it be for employment services or, helping them structure their financial picture. So, I can't say particularly that our organization specializes in, solving for healthcare issues, but like anything else, we make referrals to the appropriate organizations.
Okay, I want to ask you about your time on the Civilian Complaint Review Board. When you're not still on the Civilian Complaint Review Board, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
No, I'm not.
Well, just because police brutality is such a relevant issue, especially now, it has been for the past few years. But I do want you to kind of expand.
Well, and before you ask him, we can expand a little bit on like how relevant it's been recently, as of we've seen since late May, the protests in response to George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, the movement towards rethinking the systems of policing and redistribution of the way our city spends money, putting money from things towards things. But yeah, go ahead, continue your.
Yeah, and it circles back into the mental health issue as well. No, I just wanted to know what you did on the Civilian Complaint Review Board, how you pushed for institutional change, even like what your institutional powers were in that context, and how you think we should address the problem of policing going forward.
Okay. So I was appointed to the Civilian Complaint Review Board in 2009 by Mayor Michael Bloomberg through the City Council, and my role there was very unique because growing up in and around public housing, walking the halls of public housing and the halls of Park Avenue has given me a very unique viewpoint on policing, especially being a police clergy liaison since 1989. And that gives me about, 30 years TOJ, time on the job, they call you, as a volunteer in policing. And having several police officers that are members of my church and have been down through the years, and understanding the dynamics of policing in New York City, I have a unique lens that I look through when I'm assessing policing and the lack thereof or over policing in our neighborhoods. So I think that I possessed a very unique quality because I know the street. Dana Tyler from I think she was at Channel 2 News, named me Preacher in the Hood because I know the hood, I know the community, and I also know, a little bit about the city and administration and politics and things of that nature. And so I think sitting on the Civilian Complaint Review Board for 9 years gave me a unique position. I was the chair of community outreach, and one of the hallmarks of my tenure was getting the Civilian Complaint Review Board to move their meeting times from 10 o'clock in the morning on Thursdays to 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the evenings in the boroughs where people actually live and can attend. And so that was one of the things that I feel most proudly about with my work at the Civilian Complaint Review Board, bringing them out of obscurity and into the general public eye so that people could possibly know about them more and participate more in the complaint process if and when they are stopped, questioned, and frisked unjustifiably by a New York City police officer. So I was in charge of outreach, and also I established a youth ambassadors program that incorporated youth from urban communities to come in and to work, in a volunteer position at the CCRB to see what investigators do, see what the Civilian Complaint Review Board does, and so they could begin to share that information amongst their peers and communities about what the CCRB is all about. And as they grow and matriculate in life, they'll know that there is an agency that is designed specifically to take complaints against officers that, abuse their authority on citizens.
Yeah.
So it was very good, I believe that I was, oh, I'm sorry.
No, my bad. Go ahead.
I think I've been able to make a significant impact in that space, and a lot of people that were connected to me that didn't even know what the Civilian Complaint Review Board was, and then as a result of my tenure there, they have a full understanding of what it is, and so I think my tenure there was very well served. I did 2 terms.
Sure, and yeah, I
like
think what you mentioned about making it about moving the times, like it's such a minor detail that people don't pay attention to, but it's like it's a crucial detail, right? It makes the governing more participatory, and especially with like an institution like policing or police oversight, it's kind of inaccessible to ordinary folks. So just kind of having your ear to the pulse, like you do with the communities you serve, um, and being attuned to those details that affect uh, working people. I think it did do a great service. How, like, I mean, policing is unique because it's such a notoriously difficult institution to wrangle, um, and police have such institutional power. What effect does the Civilian Complaint Review Board have? Do they have uh, a real power to change policing practices, or is it um, is it mostly for show?
So a lot of people ask that same question, and I'll have to say that the Civilian Complaint Review Board, during my tenure, we established the APU unit, which is our own prosecution unit that is internal to the CCRB. So that when we go to oath to prosecute our cases in the administrative trial room, our investigators are represented by our own trial attorneys, and then the officers are represented by the police department. So I mean, the substantiation rate has always been I think where it should be. We substantiate a lot, but the problem is the way the system is set up. The police commissioner is the final arbiter of charges that are leveraged against any officer. So we can take it to trial, win in administrative trials, and the recommendation be 30 days suspension. And the police commissioner could say, and in more times than none, say, no, we're not going to do 30 days suspension. We're going to do 30 days, 30 vacation days. And so those are the kinds of horse tradings that, go on. It has gotten better, but, when the final arbitration lays with the top gun of the department, I guess, people may feel that the punishment would be is probably being skewed.
Right. And probably the solution.
But it's not. But it's not smoke. But it's not smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. Right. And the solution probably lies in strengthening the powers of the review board instead of eliminating it. I just have one last question about this topic. I was just wondering, because you mentioned that you were appointed by Michael Bloomberg and you served during his term. I was wondering. Just about the stop and frisk program and how you dealt with that, and how people in your community dealt with that, and what complaints were kind of brought to you with regards to that program.
Stop, question, and frisk wasn't a program. It was a profiling tool. And that's where it got in trouble, because if you're black, got jeans, sneakers, and a black jacket on, you fit the profile. And I think that Stop, Question, and Frisk was not a program. It was profiling. And I think that the mayor, in listening to his advisors and those that he thought was guiding him and giving him the best advice, was telling him that Stop, Question, and Frisk was, that was the way to go. That was the panacea, only to find out, that it wasn't, and that black and brown people in black and brown communities were being disproportionately impacted by Stop, Question, and Frisk. And we found out that out of the 600,000 or 700,000 stops only 1 or 2% result in an arrest. So the numbers don't lie. And crime has increased now, but it has not increased because of the lack of stop and question and frisk. I think it is responding to the season that we're in right now, so I think that Mayor Bloomberg, he recognized it. I mean, it's public information. He recognized that stop, question, and frisk was wrong when he was running for president. He admitted it. Some people say he admitted it too late. Okay, well, he might have, but he admitted it, and but he might have admitted it too late, but what are you going to do? You can't, penalize somebody, forever for a mistake that they have admittedly made. So I think that was probably not one of the proudest moments in the Bloomberg administration.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the assessment you gave at the end there. I mean, we can't attribute all crime to this, but a decent amount of crime can be attributed to being a response to someone's material conditions.
Well, I mean, especially today, we're looking at responses to the medical pandemic and then the racial pandemic.
Yes.
So there's an anger, and then there's I don't know what you would call the medical, but there's an anger with the racial. You know what I mean? There's an anger, and it kind of gives, you feel like you're justified, because I've been spit on, I've been dogged, I've been dissed. The reason why I live the way I live is this is what the government has provided for me. Because they look at me like trash, they provide trash for me to live in. That's government housing.
Yeah. I have one final question, and maybe Joel has something else to add on. I just want to ask, just out of curiosity, it's not important, but oh no. Wait, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Okay. I think there's a delay.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, I think there's a delay. My bad. I just want to ask if you see your work ending here with Urban Upbound, or if you have higher aspirations, or maybe even political aspirations, or what comes next to you, or are you just not focused on that?
I've not closed the door on political aspirations. And I think that might be a next step for me in my trajectory. However, I like being free to influence power and influence direction so that my hands are not tied and I'm not, cast into a silo that is predetermined to a certain extent. They always say that power is behind the throne, not on the throne.
Yeah. Well, if you ever run for office, you got 2 volunteers here waiting for you.
Wow. Well, listen, if you're ever lobbying to get on Showtime or HBO, you got a big supporter here because you guys are great.
Yeah. No, thank you, man. Yeah. Get us on Showtime. That'll do it for us.
We've been really happy to have you on. I've got one last question, and it's something that I think everyone listening in our audience would like to hear as well, which would be, Gio and I are 2 young college kids. Our audience is people around our age as well. What would you say to people in our demographic as far as what's the best way we can get involved now? How can we engage with our communities and with communities that are less fortunate than ours? and also how could people learn more about what you're up to?
Okay. Well, I tell people all the time, I say, listen, what you could do to help move the needle on what's happening in communities of color and communities that have experienced, gross inequities in the economic space is, talk about it, amongst your peers and, amongst yourselves, say, hey, what can we do to be a part of the solution, creating a pathway? What can we do to, be disruptive in this space so that it doesn't stay the same? And I would give you a piece of advice that I gave myself. I've been pastoring now 33 years. I told myself 33 years ago, I said, I don't want to wake up 33 years later or whatever time later, and the people that come behind me say, what the hell did you do for the last 33 years? I don't want that to be said. I want them to be able to look back and say, hey, this is what was done. They planted this, they planted this, they planted this, they planted this, they planted this. We have money, we have resources, we have campuses. We can build on this. We can take this to the next level. We can do what was only dreamed of being done by leaders like Bishop Taylor and others, unsung heroes around the city and around the country that are doing, miraculous works like this that are not being recognized by the masses. And so, I would just say that, it's just a time. And then the other thing is, don't, try to solve to the problem, try to think to the solution and involve people in that thought process, because, people like yourself that have resources and influence, and then I'll say resources and influence in your peer group. Influence and resources could be just the ability to amplify a message, the ability to manipulate a thought, or an idea that is positive. So I think that we should use our power and our influence to bring about positive change. You want to learn about me? I'm not hard to find. I'm here in Long Island City most times, traveling between all of our campuses here in the city.
I mean, that's where we found you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you want to know more about our work, you can go to our website at www.urbanupbound.org, www.urbanupbound.org, or follow us on Facebook. Please follow us on Facebook. You can help us a lot by following us and liking our page at urbanupbound.org. Also, follow me personally at Bishop Mitchell G. Taylor. I have a YouTube page, and I also have a Facebook page at Bishop Mitchell G. Taylor. Follow me on both of those pages. I always have interesting dialogues and conversation that will stimulate and also give you an idea of the direction that I'm going in, the things that I'm working on.
All right. Bishop, and links to all of those will be provided in the description, and we'll make sure to blast that out.
Perfect. Wow. Well, I appreciate it, guys.
Mitchell G. Taylor, thank you so much for coming on our show. It was a great pleasure to talk to you, and it was very enlightening for us personally, and I hope it was enriching for our audience.